acquired immune system, the Amoeba Sisters video that came before these videos talked about parts of the acquired immune system, didn't really call it that, but this is the part of the immune system that basically has to learn the pathogens that you are experiencing. So cells in the system are going to respond just to single antigens. So antigens are those parts of a pathogen that are unique to the pathogen. They can be, as we saw in that video, either on that actual pathogen, or they can be expressed on a cell that's infected with that pathogen. So we saw that there were like some zombie cells running around in that cartoon that had that antigen sticking out. And so the cells in the acquired immune system are going to be looking for single antigens, single markers to respond to. The thing is that this is a big advantage on how this one works because there are more possible receptors. So the innate cells have several hundred receptors that they can identify. The acquired immune system has about 10 million different antigens, receptors that they can attach to. Now, you do have to have individual types, individual groups of these cells that have the ability to identify these, but it gives us a huge amount of flexibility as far as fighting different infections in a very specific way. There is a downside to acquired immunity compared to innate immunity. Innate immunity can respond almost immediately. So if you, again, have like a paper cut or you poke yourself with a pin or something like that and puncture yourself, that swells up pretty quickly and starts getting red and sore. That's your innate immune system going right to work to try and take care of it. Your acquired immune system, on the other hand, is going to be slower to respond because there aren't as many cells in your system that are recognizing this antigen or that need to have the message passed to them that the antigen is there. So it can take several days for that message not only to get passed, but then for them to make clones, to make copies of the cells who can fight that infection. But the advantage is that once they've fought that infection, this system will retain a memory of the pathogen. So they will retain what we saw in that Amoeba Sisters video. They will retain memory cells, memory B cells, memory T cells that remember that antigen, remember that pathogen, and are hanging around. And so if it shows up again, they can go and say, here's what it is, attack it. And so the next time around when you are exposed to it, the acquired immune system will react more quickly and more aggressively the next time around. And so that's why if you get, an illness, the next time you get it, if it's the same thing, you recover from it quite a bit more quickly because your acquired immune system already knows who the invader is and how to attack it. So we saw there are two types of acquired immune cells. We've got B cells and T cells. So the B cells, these ones are going to be targeting pathogens in body fluids. So they're going to be the ones releasing antibodies. So they're going to be running around looking for the antigens, and they're going to make these antibodies. We saw before they're the Y-shaped protein molecules, and each of these little ends are going to be where the antigens bind. So they'll be specifically shaped for antigens, specific types of antigens. And so you can see here are our pathogens, and the antigens are going to bind to them, and they can stick them into these nets so that way parts of, like, for example, the innate immune system, so those innate macrophages, the big white blood cells from that system, can look at this and go, oh, hey, look, and come over and consume this whole group. And so you can see over here, we've got, a recognized, hey, these B cells are looking at these different ones, and oh, this one has bound to that antigen, it recognized that pathogen. So since this one has found it and recognized that this pathogen is hanging around, it's going to make clones. It's going to make copies of itself so that there will be a bunch of these cells around that then can release those antibodies. So we saw that guy in the video. He can get signaled to say, hey, make antibodies, start tagging stuff. The other type are the T cells. So these guys are going to target pathogens inside of the body cells themselves. So these are the ones that we saw that are going to target those zombie type cells that have already been infected. And so you've got two kind of guys helping out. So we've got the killer T cells. Those are the ones that get activated and then go and actually attack the ones that have been infected. You have helper T cells. So those helper T cells are the ones that can recognize this infected cell. So here's that infected cell with those little antigens sticking out of it, basically saying, hey, I'm infected, help. And so the helper T cells can recognize that, and then they're going to multiply and send that signal out to everybody. So they can send that signal out to B cells so they can start making copies of like antibodies and so forth. That way they can get marked. They can also turn on those killer T cells, because remember, those guys are just kind of chilling and sleeping. But once a helper T cell comes over and says, hey, these guys over here need to be destroyed, those killer T cells are going to then go and destroy these infected cells. Then some of these guys are going to become memory cells, just like some of the B cells will become memory cells, so they can hang out in case that pathogen shows back up. And then these helper T cells are also going to get some of those innate immune cells to come along and help destroy stuff too. Because remember, these guys are kind of like an all-in-one weapon. They'll eat anything. So these guys are specifically targeting these, but if any of these have those antibodies from the B cells, these innate immune cells are going to be able to go after them too. So they all end up working together to attack these pathogens. But again, these B cells and T cells are part of the acquired immune system, so they are specific for specific pathogens. While the innate immune cell system is basically, we're going to attack anybody. And that's actually part of the problem when you get into things like some of the autoimmune diseases where your body can attack itself, because these guys aren't quite looking at the right tags or fingerprints or identifications. All right, so let's talk vaccines. So how do vaccines protect us from disease? So I'm going to take a break here and I'll come back. This video is going to be there on how vaccines work. This is a really great video from SciShow. And he's going to walk you through how vaccines actually work. And it'll tie in the stuff that we've been talking about with this acquired immune system. So you're going to see things like the memory cells that we've been talking about, and how you can basically work to program those guys using parts of viruses and so forth.